Freelance, job stability, platforms, insurance, retirement, networking. I sit down with Greg Kihlström to talk about this and more.
Welcome to Fox Talks Business Podcast with your host, Tanya Fox. Tanya has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, owning retail, service, and franchise. She holds no punches and is never afraid to talk about the nitty-gritty. Together, you'll explore the good, the bad, and the motivational of business life, turning obstacles into opportunities and failures into successes. So grab your favorite drink and let's have some fun. Here's your host, speaker, crafter, and collaborator, Tanya Fox.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Greg. I'm so excited to talk more with you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking.
So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll try to keep it relatively brief, I guess. But so I've currently I'm CEO and co-founder of a tech startup in the employment space. So the way I got started is actually quite different. So I graduated college with a photography degree, nothing to do with HR and employment and workforce and all that. But I graduated and got really, really interested in joining. At that time, it was the late 90s. The web was this, new shiny thing. And so I taught myself HTML. I got a job, doing some of what I didn't really want to do much of, the print design. I'm a designer also by background, but I found a way to get myself involved in making that organization's first website. And so, I found a way to get my foot in the door, so to speak, and then quickly found a job at a tech startup. I wasn't one of the co-founders back then, but, at the employee level, and got really, really excited about this combination of technology and marketing and creativity. And, those were all things that I became deeply involved in and really interested in. And so, I was at that company for a couple of years, and like many companies at that time, it kind of went way up and then ran out of money. And I was out on the street, so to speak, and along with 40 or so of my colleagues. And so, I was faced with the choice of, what do I do? Do I go back and work for somebody else where I could get laid off again? We were going through, the financial crisis after 9/11, so 2001, 2002. There was a lot of uncertainty. I made the decision, I'm not going to go back, get a full-time job again. I'm going to strike out on my own. I became a freelancer for the first time in my life. Not the last, but, the first time in my life. And like that, but I got successful enough in getting more clients and keeping busy enough that I either had to make the decision to, do I start turning down customers, or do I start a company and grow and start building? And so I chose the latter and started a marketing agency called Carousel 30. And actually I ended up running that for about 14 years in various guises. So I had a few different sets of partners, bought them out over the years. And then I sold the company 3 years ago. And decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different than marketing. I still, I know a lot about marketing, and I know enough to be dangerous in that realm, but got a lot more interested in customer experience, because just for a lot of reasons. I got more interested in how products and services got delivered. I was always in charge of branding and marketing and advertising them, but I would often get frustrated at, well, I'm doing what I can to make this sound and look good, but if it's not delivered well and the product isn't good in the first place, it's really hard to be a good marketer. And so I got more interested in how the products were delivered and the service and all that. And then that drove me even deeper into an organization to say, well, if the employees that are delivering that service and designing the products, whatever the case may be, if they're not happy, if they're not engaged, if they're not retained on a good basis, then the company is not going to be successful, and therefore the customer experience is not going to be good, and therefore the marketing isn't going to be good, and sales and so on and so forth. So That really drove me into thinking a lot about employee experience and workforce development. And I did some consulting there, over the last couple of years, and then really just started thinking more about the workforce and what the workforce of the future is going to be and look like. And that drove me to found CareerGig, which is focused more on the freelance economy.
Which is something that we're hearing more and more about. And that was like, I mean, I even remember being in business in the 90s, and that was like an obscure thing, right? Like everybody that worked for you, it was all face to face. So how, over the years that you've seen this, how has that changed, and what does freelancing look like today?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of my statistics are from based on the U.S. workforce, but I think they apply globally, really, and so might be offset by a few years here or there. But in the United States, for instance, really we've seen this upward trajectory of whether you call it self-employed or they started calling it gig workers about a decade ago, and I'll get to that in a second. But this whole idea of self-employment, freelance work, really from the late 70s till now, it's really a straight line going up. There are more and more people choosing either they need extra income, and so they're doing it, they're moonlighting, so to speak, they're doing it on the side, or they're doing it solely. And so we see that steadily increasing. And in the United States, pre-COVID, 36% of the U.S. workforce was doing some type of this work, whether it was solely or on the side. It was estimated, again, at the beginning of this year, is estimated to go up to 50% of the US workforce by 2027. I will go out on a limb and say that's going to be much more, either much more than that, or that's going to happen much more quickly because of what COVID has kind of forced on all of us, whether it's layoffs or furloughs or just I think what's happened, I mean, I described what happened in 2001, 2002. The same thing happened in 2008, 2009, another financial crisis, another time where lots of people who thought they were doing the safe and dependable thing by having a full-time job, all of a sudden realized as soon as the economy turns, they're out, and they're out and looking for another job. And this idea of getting the gold watch and retiring and getting pensions and all that, like, that never existed in my career. I know it existed in some people's, and may still exist in some sectors, but it's really becoming less and less frequent. And so, in 2008, 2009, that's where, we had Uber and Lyft and Instacart, like all of those gig economy companies really were born. And I think what we're seeing now is, we saw a certain sector of the workforce, be disrupted. So, whether that's taxi drivers or delivery and stuff like that, I think what we're seeing now is the knowledge workers, the more highly skilled individuals are going through that disruption right now and saying, you know what, I don't need to go back and get a full-time job. I can do this. Those people in the freelance economy, though, they do need some financial stability. And there's a lot of things that are provided by full-time employers. And, that's another thing that I'm trying to solve with CareerGig.
And I think that that's true because, like you said, we're seeing such an upswing of it. And I think I know, like in my own history because I started in the corporate world and then I sort of branched out on my own, that the one problem that I hear time and time again with even with my coaching clients is the boredom of the corporate world, because you can kind of pigeonhole yourself into a position or into a type of role, and doing freelance kind of opens you up that you can sort of change yourself pretty easily, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it's there's a few things. I mean, that's an interesting. So the corollary there, I would say, is I've always been on the consulting side. I mean, my role now is actually the first time I've been a client. To use that client consultant terminology, it's the first time I've been a client in like 20 years. So that's a whole other podcast topic probably, but. But what I liked about running a marketing agency was, I had 20 different clients, and I got to learn everything from entomology to, about consumer goods and products to, you name it, so all over the map. And so somebody that likes to learn and maybe has a short attention span, that's a great environment for them. But to your point, if you're in-house full-time at a corporate job, then yeah, it's, what I do like about that is you get to go really deep in one thing. And it's not like you only have one thing to do, but you
Right.
get to go really deep on a topic, which is nice. And some people find that really valuable. Others get a little bored or whatever. But, I think a lot of people take on full-time jobs and salaries because they don't really know what the alternative is. And, it's trying to get stability where, again, as we see over the years and each time there's a financial crisis, it becomes more and more clear that, it's not even that corporations are bad and, all of that. It's more they're practical and they're getting more and more pragmatic, and the world is getting more and more unpredictable, that it's not safe to be able to depend on just having a full-time job for 20 years at the same company, let alone 5 years. And I think a lot of people give up a lot of freedom and a lot of opportunity to learn, and let alone, flexibility to, have time to work when they want to work or how they want to work, whether that's, taking care of kids, taking care of spouse, partner, parents, whatever the case may be, or just having freedom to travel. Or stuff like that. I think a lot of people sacrifice a lot of freedom in order to get something that isn't quite as stable as as it even used to be.
And I think, it reminds me of even, and I'm going to guess we're roughly around the same age, but even growing up, I remember that was what you did. Like if you weren't in an entrepreneurial family, which I wasn't, my father was in the military, my mom worked for the government. So you can't get more streamlined than that. And that was what you did, right? You worked for a company. You went to work. You didn't necessarily like your job, but it paid you well. You were going to be able to retire. So you just did that. And I remember sitting there going, God, I can't do this for 40 years. Like I don't have it in me. And that was sort of my strive to sort of step out. Do you find that is happening a lot more, that, because we're here, we hear a lot about it, about, kids these days and how they don't stick with jobs. But I'm sort of seeing it as, it's not that people don't want to stick with jobs, is that they realize how much of the majority of your life is spent working. And are you willing to give up that amount of time from things like you said, the lifestyle that you want, to do something that you maybe don't necessarily love? I don't want to say hate, but
yeah. I mean, so there's a lot in that. So I mean, I think, a couple things there. I do think there's some misconceptions about millennials. I think I'm a Gen Xer, but the millennials, I think in some cases get a bad rap for tenure and stuff like that. I mean, I think the average CMO tenure these days is like 18 to 24 months. So that's
right.
and those aren't millennials for the most part. I mean, there are several, I'm sure, but those are older generations in the workforce. And so I think it's a general trend. CEO tenure, same thing. It's about 24 months. And so I think there's overall trends in the industry where that the length of time that somebody spends is just decreasing. The other thing is there's an incentive to switch jobs. I mean, the best way to get us a raise is to go somewhere else. I mean, I've gotten decent raises when I stuck around somewhere long enough, but not as much as you would if you were to, hop and go to a different place. And so, we're incentivizing these millennials or Gen Zs or even, us older folks to like jump ship, because we get raises when we get new jobs. So I mean, so that's part of it. But I mean, to the other piece, the freedom piece, I mean, I do think that, all of the terrible things that have happened with COVID and the aftermath, and we're still working through it, and there, there's a lot of things yet to come. But a positive out of this is that we've all learned that we can do a lot of things that we didn't necessarily think we could. And companies have learned that they can have remote work, and sure enough, the company still exists. And some people, yes, definitely struggle. I mean, I've been working, on and off from home, for a couple of decades now. So, some of us are more used to that than others, and some certainly struggle. But no company has gone out of business because they started working remotely. They may have gone out of business because they had a bad business model or were in an industry that was just deeply affected. But, we've all learned that we can have a little more freedom. And, those people that needed more freedom, but they were sacrificing that in order to have a job, now they're realizing, well, maybe I can do this. And maybe it's full-time for a company that understands flexibility, but maybe it's for myself, because again, the next time something bad happens, they might be out, because there's cost cutting and cutting of staff again. So I think the future really is, more agency and independence by individuals. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think companies and their workers, whether they're full-time or freelance, can both win in that scenario.
So let's take it from a standpoint of someone who's interested. So let's say there's somebody who's out there, whatever their circumstances in the corporate world, or maybe they're just trying to get back into the workforce after a while and are interested in it. What are some of the steps that they should take, or some tips that you can give them if they're interested in doing this type of work and creating this as a steady career?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a few things to, if you really haven't considered being independent or being a freelancer before, there are definitely some things that you need to consider. So, I mean, first of all, you're not only responsible for doing the work, but you're responsible for finding the work. And so, that's one of those things where I know as an entrepreneur, I started my first company early 20s. I thought I was going to get to do only what I love doing all day, every day. What a beautiful scenario that was. Except then I realized I also had to be COO and CFO, and I knew literally nothing about finance or anything, that many years ago. And so, there are responsibilities that you have to take on. Now, you don't have to do it all yourself. And so, there's platforms. I mean, I've started a platform, CareerGig, that connects freelancers with opportunities. There's plenty of those out there as well. That's a major benefit, to be able to not have to hunt, for days and weeks for every single opportunity, but to have easier ways to find work. So, the sales aspect is definitely one. The other part is, or another part is the financial, and let's call it the operational part of things. Is, so, you've got to get your taxes and your accounting and all that stuff in line, because again, think about all those things you took for granted as a full-time employee. Someone was paying your payroll, you just cash a check and all that stuff. And then, the third part is the longer term. It's the financial stability and security. And so, here in the States, our lovely health care program, it's fortunately some things have improved over the years, but there's a lot of issues. And so, insurance in general, it's not just healthcare, but it's also life and disability. What happens if you get hurt? What happens if your spouse or partner passes away? What happens, if you have to go to the hospital? Like, all of those types of things. A lot of full-time employees have access to insurance and coverage for things like that. And so that's another thing that you need to think about. Retirements is another thing you need to think about, and all that. So it's like, it helps to have, people to talk to. Again, that's another thing that we're trying to solve with CareerGig as well, is, but that's also something that a financial advisor can help you out with and stuff. So it's like taking those three things. And then I guess finally is just, you need to continually hone your craft and find the time and have the discipline to, and mind you, you've got to do the work and bill and all that stuff on top of it, but you've got to find the time and find a process to continually learn. And I think that sounds like a lot, but when you think about it, you can do all of that on your own time, at your own pace, as long as it gets done. You can do it whenever, however. You can spend money hiring consultants to do it for you. You can find platforms to do some of it for you, all of those things. It's like, you're in complete control of that, versus having to show up 9 to 5 every day and take maybe 2 weeks of vacation if you're lucky, and then, feel guilty about it depending on where you work and all that. So it's like, it's not like everything's taken care of, but you have complete control and agency over your destiny.
So tell us a little bit more about what CareerGig does for people. So let's say that someone's made the decision, they want to do that, they need some help, they come to you, what type of help are they going to find?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things that we do. And so, first of all, freelancers can come and sign up, and based on their skills that they identify, they're able to find opportunities. So contract, freelance, remote opportunities. And so, we started out solely in the United States for a few reasons that I'll get to in a minute, but we're expanding now internationally to be able to really address the full freelance market. There's plenty of people all over the world that are highly skilled and really, can do some great work for the companies that we work with. And so, first there's that. So that solves the sales challenge, so to speak, because you're able to identify opportunities. The second part is being able to truly vet and verify that you have the skills and the work experience that you have. And so one of the things, and one of the big differentiators of our platform is how seriously we take, there's a lot of places where you can say, okay, well, I know how to do X, Y, Z. I'm a PHP programmer. And so please trust me that I know how to do this and hire me. And so we just take it a lot more seriously than that, where, we have 3 levels of reputation on our platform. The first is me claiming and saying, hey, I know how to do this. That's great. At least identifies it. The second level is getting someone to verify that. So getting someone to confirm it, that, they've worked with you. So a reference, things like that. And I think that's good. It's not the end all be all though, because I know, when I send resume references to somebody, who do I ask to be a reference? It's the people that like me.
It's rare you send the reference of the person who's going to go, no, they were horrible, and I don't.
Right, exactly. It's,
no comment.
It's not exactly just my mom, but it's like, it's the people that, that like me, and, I know what they're going to say if they're, thereabouts. But we do that, we do have a way to, to verify that they're real people and all that. But then the third level is where it gets really interesting, which is actually certifying that those things are true. And so in some cases, if it's a skill that we're saying that we have, we can give a skills assessment and say, okay, yeah, not only did they claimed it, they got confirmed, but we can certify that, yes, they can actually do this. If there's accreditation involved in that, we can actually go to that third party and say, okay, did this person get accredited for that? Yes, we can add that. So that whole idea of reputation we take seriously. And then the third part is the financial security and stability and all those kinds of things. And so, primarily we started in the United States. And so a lot of our insurance and things like that are really based around the US market. We're expanding into other ways to support other markets. But we do have the ability to provide some really good insurance and other financial products to people that, again, they were relying on that at a full-time job. Now they no longer have access to that. And so we're looking at expanding what the definition of benefits are as well, to that really can extend to anyone, anywhere. And, so again, other countries have different, and I would argue better healthcare systems than we do as far as insurance is concerned. But there's lots of ways that we can provide benefits for freelancers, whether that's discounts on products or subscriptions or just certain access to different things. And so all of those things together really, provide a full solution to people that are, whether they're experienced, career freelancers, or, they're just kind of dipping their toes in.
So let's take it to the other side a bit of you creating this, because you said, you were sort of in the corporate world and then you decided to start this business, and now you've sort of been thrown into a different role as CEO. So what has that change been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, this is my second time being CEO. I mean, when I ran the marketing agency, I did that, but to your point, very, very different. In the consulting world, I love doing consulting, and I think at some point in my career I may go back to that. Just because I do like that. But I think the big thing, a few big things. So one, we came up with the full concept, I would say, early in 2020. We'd been talking about several things and along the lines of reputation, like I was describing, but really we decided, early this year that, there was something there. And then, when COVID really was hitting, we decided that, you know what, either we're going to do it this summer, we're going to launch this platform, or we're going to miss the boat because someone else is going to take, you know, what we have, or, you know, to just kind of figure out this secret sauce, so to speak. And so we basically, between April and July, built the platform and found the right partners. And so, you know, my job as CEO, I was at my marketing agency, I was very hands-on and actually worked as a consultant with my clients. And so I was more doing some of the work, not all of the work, but I was doing some of the work, you know, at the agency. As CEO of CareerGig, it's more, you know, I read a lot of books about leadership and about, you know, how to be a good CEO and all those kinds of things. And, you know, my job really is to make sure that everyone else has what they need to do a great job. And I do, you know, my main role really is to, we're raising investment right now. So my main role right now is to lead that charge of raising money, but it's also really to make sure that got a great team, but they all have, there's a lot of moving pieces. You know, we've been dealing with, you know, insurance regulations in the US and, you know, all manner. I know way too much about that these days, but I knew nothing about it 18 months ago. But like now, you know, all of these things, but, you know, it's not my job to know all of the details. It's my job to make sure that the person that knows all of those things has what they need and that I know the relevant information. And so that's it's an exercise in delegation to an extent that I'll confess I didn't have as much, you know, in my past. And so that's been a great learning experience for me, but it's also been, I'm thankful every day to have a team that they're really smart and capable and they know what they need to do. They just need, you know, they need to be enabled to do that. And that's, you know, that's really my role.
And I think we hear that so much, right? Because people always think, well, you know, if I'm going to head up this company or I'm going to make this bigger, especially like you said, if they're kind of starting off small and they have what they need to survive, but they're at that point like you were at where, look, it's either I stay exactly where I am and I turn people down or I decide to grow, that it's that fear that a lot of people have of, but I don't know everything. So I thank you for sharing that because I think it's important to know. But when you were getting ready to like build your team and you were looking at that because you were growing, do you have any tips of like how you went about doing that? Because we hear that a lot, right? Like it's the team, you build a good team, but then a lot of people are like, where do I find these people?
Yeah, I mean, I strongly believe in just, you know, the power of networking. And I also strongly believe in not burning bridges. And so, you know, I'm happy to say several of the people, not only on the team, but also like on our advisory board, I've known these people for the better part of, if not 10 years, you know, well, one of the co-founders I've known for about 20 years. So, you know, a lot of the people, not all of them, but a lot of the people are people that I've known for years and trust them. And I haven't even necessarily worked with them in the past, but I've worked alongside them or been on a board with them or stuff like that. And so, you know, there's a level of comfort there. The danger in that, and I will say when I first started my marketing agency, I did, wouldn't say it's a mistake, but I made the choice to go into business with friends, and we all still speak, you know, so it's not like one of those things, but it's like, I quickly, you know, it's funny how you hear things, but until you actually live through them, you realize that, you know, maybe you should read books twice instead of once. But, you know, again, we're all on speaking terms and everything like that. But you know, I made the mistake of because I knew someone, I said, okay, well, that's cool. That's comfy. And let's do this together and stuff like that. And, you know, some of those types of decisions have panned out really well. And, you know, I think I've grown enough in my career to know, like, now I've chosen the right people and know that I can trust them. And I also, I'll say, as a leader, I hold people more accountable than I did when I was 24 and stuff like that. So that's, some of that's personal growth. But for those people that I didn't know for 10 years, it's finding better ways to get to, okay, well, I mean, definitely if someone comes recommended from someone that I highly trust, that goes a long way. It doesn't go all the way, but it goes a long way. And then just finding ways, like, how do you test someone without just agreeing to too much and just jumping in. You know, we all want to move quickly and all that, but we can't, you know, you can't bring someone in 100% if you don't 100% trust them. And, you know, so I try to find ways to test without, you know, testing someone's patience, I guess. And, you know, just like, okay, well, let's talk about this, or tell me how you think about that. You know, some of this maybe is just good interviewing skills, but it's also, if you're going to go, if you're starting a new business and you're really trying to like, am I going to trust this person with my life, so to speak? Am I ready to go, you know, into battle side by side, to use weird analogies, like, you know, or do I need a little more, you know, how do we test this out a little bit before we go, you know, we go full throttle? And so, you know, I've tried to find ways to do that. And I will say every case is a little bit different, because every situation's a little bit different. But I feel fortunate that I've been able to find ways to do that and find the right people.
And so if you could give a tip to someone who is starting out and just on any avenue, but looking to start out on their own business. So this isn't a side thing. They're all in, they're ready to go, and they want to do freelancing. What's the one of the things, I guess I should say, that they should pay attention to when they're out searching for jobs, like, or not jobs, but looking for gigs? I guess I should use the terminology.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, it's important to find things that, so, you know, it's important to build your portfolio, so to speak. What, you know, whatever kind of work you do, you know, you're building a resume, you're building a portfolio. So, you know, it's important to do that. But I think it's also important to have some quick wins. And so, you know, going too far out on a limb and doing something that, you know, is way outside of your comfort zone, I think it's risky. You know, I think we're all taught that, like, fake it till you make it. And, you know, far be it from me to say that doesn't exist and that I haven't done that, and, you know, in several regards. But I think when you're first starting out, what you need to be able to show is that I can do something, I'm dependable, I can do it. And the people that hired me to do it the first time hired me to do it again. And so that may be, you know, that may be a 5-day task versus trying to go after the moonshot, like 5-year task or something like that. But, you know, get some of those. I'm a strong proponent of, I would say, Agile in, you know, in maybe a broad sense of the word, which is do things in increments, make continual progress, make continual improvement. But, you know, don't just try for that thing that you want to be in 10 years from now or something like that. Try to do something that is measurable, that you can show success on. And then, you know what, if you get that 5-day task and you have somebody raving about what you're doing, then, you know what, you're not only going to get that company as a lifetime customer, you're going to get the next one, because you can already show progress that you achieved something. And I think, you know, just thinking in smaller increments like that, I mean, that, to me, that goes back to the Agile sprint kind of thing, where let's do something. We know what the requirements are. Let's know what success looks like. Let's measure when we're done with that. And then let's keep moving, versus, again, just trying to over-engineer some, you know, life plan when we really, I mean, if anybody can tell me what any of us are going to be doing 2 years from now, like, they're much smarter than me.
And I think that's such a good tip, because it's true. I know I played it very safe when I first started, you know, my career, and when I branched out on my own. And then once I sort of had that reputation, then I started feeling more comfortable to branch out, because I knew I had the reputation that somebody wouldn't just go, oh, she was a flake, that I had enough people that knew me that I could go, I'm going to try this and see if it was going to work. But at least I had that cushion to back on, that I could say, you know, I did try this and it really is not my area of expertise any longer.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, you know, I've been accused of being an overachiever, and I'm, you know, I drive myself pretty hard to do things. And, you know, I think if you fall in that realm of things, it's like, oh, well, you know, you look at, again, that small project or small task, and you're just like, well, but I'm capable of so much more. If only they could see that I did that. Well, if they have to wait 5 months or 5 years to see you finish that, then, you know, what have you gained? Like, you know, to exactly what you're saying, like, do the work towards the bigger thing by all means. Like, don't sell yourself short, but like, do something that you can show progress on so people can understand how good you are, and then you'll get there. And when you get there, it'll be truly earned, and everyone will agree with you that you deserved it as well.
Yeah. And then I think it's good too, like what you were saying, you can do those smaller jobs, which let those people that are hiring see and get to know you a little bit more, because it is a leap of faith, really, if you're going to somebody new that they're like, well, we're going to try and see if it works. So yeah, I definitely probably wouldn't hire somebody to do a huge project if I'd never worked for them before. I'd want that little one first and then go, okay, let's see how she works or how he works, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if people are interested in learning more about CareerGig and how they can work with you, or even if they have a company and they're like, this is the direction that we want to take, where's the best way for them to find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, two things I'd recommend. I mean, definitely, careergig.com is our URL. Please check it out. Freelancers and companies can sign up. It's free for both. There's no subscriptions. We charge on a transaction basis. So, you can sign up, poke around and check it out for, at no cost and risk or anything like that. If you have questions, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I would, look me up. Please mention this podcast that you heard me here. But, please feel free to reach out and contact me. I'm more than happy to answer questions or direct you to the right person on my team if, depending on what they are. And yeah, no, I'd love any questions or anything that anybody has.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing too, because, we had talked a lot about, a person becoming a freelancer, but I think there's a lot of people out there that have companies that maybe are in a situation where, say they don't really have the resources to hire somebody full-time, but they have a project that they need work on. So then I'm assuming that CareerGig is a good place for them to go to be able to find those people, to help you out for those little tasks that you're like, well, I don't really need somebody full-time because it's just, it's a 6-month thing or it's a 3-month thing or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we're, the niche that we fill that's really interesting is, so there are freelance sites out there that are low cost, and you can hire, they're good, designers, developers, lots of different types of skills out there. Nothing wrong with that, but they're on the lower cost side of the things. You kind of get sometimes what you pay for. If you find a good freelancer through there, that's awesome. I know plenty of people that do. Nothing wrong with that. And then on the higher end of things, there's staffing and recruiting firms, which again, they do great work, but they're slower. They may be very methodical, but they're slower at what they do. They're expensive. And so a lot of companies just either can't or don't want to afford those fees. And so where we really fit is we find highly skilled people that that can do the work that's needed, whether it's a, very short or a relatively short, it could be a week, it could be 6 months, it could be, 12 months, things like that. But it's all, contract work, freelance work. And basically a company can say, okay, we have these set of credentials, we need somebody background checked, we need someone certified in Microsoft networking, you name it, whatever the case may be, we need them to have this set of skills. We can find those people, we can certify that they have those exact credentials, and we call it the verified on-demand workforce, which is essentially a pool of people that match your qualifications, but are full-time freelancers. So they're not going to be off the job, they're not going to get a full-time job next week and be off the market, and then you lose access to them.
And then you're stuck. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. They're yours. They work for lots of different companies, but they're available when you need them, as opposed to, man, if I don't hire this person right now, I'm going to lose them forever. So yeah, I mean, that's your point. It's a great fit for both sides of the equation, both companies and freelancers.
Well, that's great. I know I've learned a lot. I had a lot of great tips. So for those that are in a leadership role, and I'm totally throwing you on the spot right now, because I know you say like you read a lot and you do a lot of research. So what is the last book you read? I'm totally throwing you on the spot. Sorry about this. Sure. That you could recommend to our readers that would be like a must read?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll use the one I'm reading right now, actually. So it's interesting. So I've done I'm interested in cognitive bias, and so because I think it's I just think it's important that we understand our biases and stuff. So there's a book called Factfulness, and I forget the author's name. It's a Swedish author, and really interesting. Just, it has nothing really to do with leadership and workforce or any of those topics, but it does have to do with the way that we think about the world and how we tend to think in binary as opposed to a much more variable amount of ways to look at the world and stuff like that. And so I highly recommend that. If I were to have a second, there's a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And I forget what his second book was, Ben Horowitz, but that book I thought was really interesting because I read a lot of books about leadership and all that stuff. It was a different take, and I think it was a very honest and direct take on, there's not a formula to some of the things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so, I thought it was refreshing to hear that someone didn't just spell out an acronym and solve all my problems, but there's going to be some things that come up that there is no acronym that will solve. So.
And so just before we go, are there any projects or what do you have your eyes set on in the short term, say?
Yeah, so I'm working on a new book. So I wrote a series of books called the Agile series, and I have a podcast called the Agile World as well. And so it's looking at applying Agile methodology, and sometimes more strict than others, but applying Agile methodology to different aspects of business. And so my first one was looking at the web design and development process, because I was doing a lot of that at the marketing agency. And then I looked at branding and marketing and customer experience. And so the new one that I'm working on right now and hoping to release in a few months is called the Agile Workforce. And so much as you'd imagine, based on my work at CareerGig, it's talking about how the workforce is changing and how, we're not going to go 100% freelance and contract, but it's really this hybrid model of, we've got to have flexibility and stability at the same time. And so kind of a paradox, but how do we actually deal with that? And also, I think the through line for all of that is, how do we actually increase the individual's power and agency and just satisfaction throughout all of these processes? And I do believe that there's a positive continuum there for individuals to have more freedom and agency and choice in all of that, whether it's consumer choice or work choice as an employee. And so kind of just following along that line.
That's awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we tag to where people can find your other books and as well your podcast on our page. It was such a pleasure to sit and chat with you and learn more from you. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it was great to talk with you.
Don't forget to visit our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca and click on blogs at the top of the page, where you're going to be able to find this episode with quick links on how you can connect with Greg and his company. And as always, I look forward to your feedback. So let me know what your biggest takeaway from this episode was on your favorite social media platform. And no matter what you're doing today, whether you're deciding to branch out into a whole new career or whether you're plugging away in the one that you have some time to have some fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?